Today on the Best of Food for Thought, I'm taking a look back at some of my favorite Mediterranean meals. I'm starting at the breakfast table with an Italian twist on an American classic, pancetta-fried eggs. Next, I've got a smoky and spicy Chipotle hummus. Then I'm onto a fresh and zesty Caprese pasta salad. Finally, I've got a homemade version of the Italian standard, Margherita Pizza. The Mediterranean Sea has influenced cuisine around the world with its emphasis on fresh and flavorful ingredients. Today, I'm making some of my favorite meals inspired by the many flavors of the region. First up, I've got an Italian take on an American breakfast standard with pancetta-fried eggs, complete with my mom's hash browns on the side. What are eggs without hash browns? And I've got the easiest recipe ever. It's my mom's version, which is sort of like Bubble and Squeak, which is just British hash browns. And potatoes are really workhorses in the kitchen. Once I get these done, they'll hold while I get started on the rest of my breakfast, pancetta fried eggs. To get started on my hash browns, I have cooked russet potatoes. I just put these in the microwave. You can do whatever you like, just as long as they get fork tender. You want them nice and soft and the skin pulling away. And I love using russets or any mashed potato. You just want them really nice and soft and starchy. That way they work great in this dish. I'm going to roughly chop my potatoes, and I like to keep the skin on. You can take it off if you prefer that, but I just like to keep it really rustic, really simple. This recipe really could not be simpler. It's just potatoes, a little bit of butter, salt, pepper, and garlic. So next up, getting my garlic ready. I'm using 3 garlic cloves, and I'm gonna mince them very finely in a garlic press. You can mince this by hand as well. I like using the garlic press because I kind of want the garlic to sort of melt away into the potatoes. So this also smashes them and gets them a little bit softer. Well, I'm ready to get cooking. To get started on my hash browns, I'm just going to take a heated pan and drizzle a little bit of olive oil in it. That's about right. I just want the whole pan to be nice and coated. And then straight into that, I'm putting my garlic, and I'm cooking this very quickly. Garlic can burn instantly, so I'm gonna keep an eye on this. I'm going to add my potatoes right on top of the garlic and oil. And I'm going to pat it down until it forms a disc. And I'm smashing it down with my spatula because I really want to sear that side of the potatoes. I want it nice and crunchy. Now, so I'm going to add some salt and pepper on top. And I'm going to drizzle it with a little more oil. This looks ready to flip, so I'm just going to chop it up into quarters. Makes it easier to turn. And I'm gonna take my spatula, I'm going to flip. And it's okay if it's not perfect. This is an imperfect science. You just, in general, wanna cover as many different sides of the potatoes as you can. So I'm just gonna keep flipping until this whole thing is turned over, and then press back down with my spatula, searing it again. And once this has had time to get really crusty on the bottom, I'm gonna flip it again. And I want the potatoes to be really well seasoned, so I'm going to add a little bit of salt and then some pepper. I'm going to give these a flip. Ooh, that looks really good. What I'm looking for is for an even coating of golden brown. So once every little bit and nook and cranny of these potatoes has a little bit of crispiness to it, that's when I know I'm done. Well, my potatoes look perfect. I'm gonna pop these in the oven and get started on my eggs. My potatoes are waiting for me in the oven, so I'm gonna get started on my pancetta fried eggs. And this is actually easier than bacon and eggs. I'm using one pan and they both cook at the same time, so how easy is that? I'm starting with my pancetta, which is basically Italian bacon. It's cut really thin, so it cooks super quick. I'm going to pop my pancetta onto an oiled saucepan. Ooh, doesn't that sound wonderful? So I'm doing a couple of medallions because pancetta cooks really quickly. Well, that's starting to look really crispy, so I'm gonna give it a flip. Now, I'm going to crack my egg right on top of it, and the fun thing here is that the egg whites they go all into the pancetta, so it kind of becomes one unit, one delicious bite. And the pancetta, which is a little bit salty, seasons the egg really well. And now, while the other side of the pancetta is cooking, the egg will cook too. I like mine sunny side up, but if you like it over easy, or however you like your egg, go ahead and cook it as usual. Well, this looks done, so I'm gonna plate it with my hash browns and give it a taste. This looks delicious, and I gave it a little hit of parsley. It just sort of elevates all the flavors and is really bright and tasty. So I'm gonna give it a try. I wanna get a little bite of everything, so poking the yolk. Ooh. I could put a fried egg on top of anything. It's one of my favorite things to eat. Got a bite of the pancetta, got a little bit of the yolk. All it needs is some hash browns. That is breakfast. Oh, it tastes so good. And I love the pancetta in this dish. It's very different from bacon. It's super delicate, very mild. It's not smoked at all. And I love what it brings to this dish. It makes it so easy. It crisps up in no time, and one pan to wash. How great is that?
Coming up, we sail across the Mediterranean with my next dish, homemade Chipotle hummus, when the best of Food for Thought returns. My next Mediterranean meal is a dish thought to have originated in 13th century Egypt and is now a favorite appetizer around the world.
Hummus is a creamy Mediterranean dip, and the one I'm making has a little Mexican twist to it. I add chipotle peppers, which are smoked jalapeno, so it adds this really beautiful, smoky, spicy kick that is absolutely delicious. The most important ingredient in hummus are garbanzo beans, otherwise known as chickpeas, and I love starting with them dry. It requires a little bit of extra effort. You have to soak them overnight, but it's totally worth it because you can add all these other flavors that you love and you get a lot of really great, deep, beautiful flavors going on. Now, if you don't have time to let these bad boys soak overnight, canned is totally fine. Just make sure to rinse off the residual salt, just to make sure they're not too salty. I've soaked my garbanzo beans overnight, so these are ready for my other ingredients, which is just rosemary and then 3 cloves of garlic. The easiest way to peel the garlic once I've taken it all apart is I just set it here and I use my big knife and I smash it. And what this does is it loosens up the paper around the garlic, so it makes it very easy to peel off. And I just pop that in, the rest of my garbanzo beans. The next one is even easier. I have some lovely rosemary here. I take a whole sprig and I just throw it in. Later on, I'll fish it out, but for now, the whole sprig's fine. So my garbanzo beans are ready to be simmered for, wait for it, 3 hours. I know that sounds super long, but it's really important to get it nice and tender. So go read a book, watch some TV, and let this simmer.
So these have been simmering for 3 hours, and now I'm going to pull them off the heat and drain them.
My garbanzo beans are perfectly simmered and they're nice and plump. Look how much bigger these got. The way you know that they're ready is if you squeeze them in your hand like so, they break right apart, super tender. I'm just gonna chuck these in the food processor while I get the rest of my ingredients measured out. And I'm going to fish out my rosemary because I want the flavor, not the stem, in my hummus. So I have all of my other ingredients ready to go in with the garbanzo beans, and I saved some of the garbanzo bean water. If you like a thinner, creamier hummus, garbanzo bean water is a great way to thin it out because olive oil actually thickens it. First going in, some tahini. Tahini is just sesame seed paste, and it adds a really wonderful kind of nutty flavor to the hummus. So I'm just gonna add a 1/4 cup, and that just goes right in. Next, I'm gonna have a little bit of lemon in there, and all I need is about 2 tablespoons worth, not that much. And now, the ingredient that kind of gives this whole thing a really interesting kick, chipotle peppers. It's really smoky and very spicy, and so these are smoked jalapenos that are in an adobo sauce. And I'm using the sauce to impart a really lovely, smoky, spicy, sort of interesting, deep background note to the whole thing. So I'm adding a tablespoon. It's not a lot, but it goes a long way. Next, I'm going to add some smoked paprika, and once again, that beautiful smoky flavor is really great in hummus, so I'm just going to put about ½ teaspoon in. That's about right. Now, for the most important part, the seasoning. A starchy bean like garbanzo really soaks up a lot of salt, so you're gonna be very liberal with the amount of seasoning you're adding. So first I'm gonna start with some black pepper, and I'm gonna add my salt. And the final ingredient is some olive oil. I'm going to be adding about 1/3 cup, so a very good amount of olive oil. So I'm gonna pop this on. I'm going to pulse my garbanzo bean mixture until everything's nice and smooth. And if it's too thick, go ahead and add some of that garbanzo bean water to thin it out. So the consistency is perfectly smooth and still thick and creamy, exactly how I want it. It'll go perfectly with vegetables. I'm gonna give it a taste just to make sure if it needs any more adjustment. No, it's really good. It's perfectly seasoned, and you really get that chipotle kick kind of at the end. So it's smoky, a little spicy at the finish. It's so good.
Up next, I've got another classic Mediterranean dish, my Caprese pasta salad, right after this. Welcome back. My next Mediterranean meal is a Caprese pasta salad with toasted pine nuts.
It's super fresh and really simple with cherry tomatoes, basil, mozzarella, and balsamic vinaigrette that makes it perfectly irresistible. To get started, I'm going to measure out my orzo, which is just a rice-shaped pasta. You can use any pasta you like, but I like orzo because it's really small and has a great texture. So I'm just gonna measure out a cup right here. Perfect. And into the pot until it's perfectly al dente. So while my pasta is cooking, I'm gonna get started on the rest of my ingredients. The spread I have here is basically the holy trinity of Italian cooking. You have seen this everywhere, even if you didn't know it. Think of a Margherita Pizza, a Caprese salad, a Caprese sandwich, mozzarella with basil and tomato. It's just meant to be. So as you can see, these are just the perfect little bites. So I'm just gonna have these. And I'm gonna do this entire container, and that's because I want to get a bite of everything with every forkful. That's the reason why this is such a hearty salad, is it has a lot of different textures and a lot of great chunky ingredients in it. Well, I have my mountain of mini mozzarella, so I'm gonna get started on just slicing these in half and setting them aside. Great, well, now I'm gonna get started on my tomatoes, and because these are a little bit larger, I'm going to quarter them. The idea here is you want everything to be the same size. You don't wanna have a big chunk of mozzarella and just a little bit of tomato. You want it all to be even so you get an equal bite of everything. I'm going to want about the same amount of mozzarella and tomatoes, so just kind of eyeball it if you don't really know exactly what the measurement is. And you know what? I think I'm actually going to 8 these, because if you look at a piece of the mozzarella next to the tomato, you can see that it still needs to get halved because you want it to all be the exact same size. Now I'm going to chiffonade my basil, which is just sort of a fancy way of saying I'm slicing it up. So the trick here is you peel off all the leaves like so, and then I'm going to stack them, roll them up, and slice them. And as you can see, I've sliced these into really fine ribbons, and the idea here is you want the basil to give all the flavor, but not really any of its chewier texture. You don't want to get any leaves stuck in your teeth. This looks like about a half a cup, so I'm starting with this. I can always add more. And I'm pretty sure my orzo is about done, so I'm gonna go drain it. So the orzo is perfectly drained and it's cooled down. And the reason why I want it cool is because I don't want the warm orzo to cook the tomatoes. I want my tomatoes to be really fresh and have a great texture to them, so you want to cool it before you put it in. So I'm just gonna add about 2 tablespoons of my vinaigrette straight into the orzo. And I'm just gonna stir it up. And the reason why I'm adding the vinaigrette straight to the orzo before I add the other ingredients is because the vinaigrette will color the mozzarella and I want that to stay a beautiful white. All right, well this looks just about dressed. So I'm gonna add the other ingredients and just mix them together. So I have my toasted pine nuts, and what I love about these is they just give a beautiful sort of toasted flavor and a great crunchy texture. So now I'm gonna add the rest of my ingredients, and I'm gonna do it in 2 batches because I wanna season it in between. So I'm just gonna season it with a little bit of salt, and now the pepper. I love pepper with anything caprese. Just adds that little bit of a spicy bite. Well, this looks beautiful, but I still have to add the rest of my ingredients. So in they go. And you can see that this pasta salad is just as much about the salad as it is about the pasta. I like having everything in a really nice balance here, so you get all of those different flavors and textures. And once again, just a little more seasoning. So one more big stir through, and don't obliterate it. You just need to give it 1 or 2 passes so everything gets nice and integrated. Well, the only thing left to do is finish it with a drizzle of balsamic vinegar. I love this for just like that last big hit. It's so delicious. Well, let's give it a taste. That's really fresh tasting. You get that beautiful herbaceous hit from the basil. All the balsamic really brings it together. Really delicious.
I've got one last Mediterranean meal, and this one is a classic. I'm making a homemade margherita pizza when we come back on the Best of Food for Thought. My last Mediterranean meal is a simple and delicious margherita pizza.
This pizza was invented in the 19th century and presented to Queen Margherita of Italy. So it took on her name and the rest is history. First up, I'm going to roughly chop my basil, and I like to keep the small leaves just to sprinkle on top really fresh. It's nice to get the flavor of the cooked basil and the fresh basil. So chop this, I'm just gonna roll it up like so, and then just really thinly slice it. That looks great. Now I'm going to thinly slice my mozzarella. And this mozzarella is very fresh, so this is going to melt beautifully. And I'm just going to really thinly slice it, about 1/4 inch thick. And that's it for my ingredients going into my margherita pizza. And now I need to get my pizza dough ready. So I'm going to grab my peel, sprinkle it with a little bit of cornmeal, because I don't want my pizza to stick. It looks pretty good. I'm gonna get started on my dough, and I'm using gravity, and it's just weighing down the dough while I'm pushing it towards the edge, just like this. When my family and I make it, we get an assembly line going. So we have all of the dough ready and all of our toppings out, so we can just make one pizza after the other. All right, time for my toppings. I'm going to add my tomato sauce, and it's exactly the same as the other pizza, just use a little bit of sauce. You do not want to overdo it. Okay, that looks great. So now I'm gonna grab some of my sliced mozzarella, and I do not want it to get weighed down with the cheese, so I am only putting a little bit of cheese on. It's going to spread and melt as it bakes, so I do not want to add too much. And then just a hit of the basil right on top. Okay, I'm going to drizzle it with just a little bit of olive oil. I don't want too much. I'm just gonna take my finger and kind of rub it against the sides. This adds a really nice color, and I don't want too much because olive oil can burn in a high heat oven. My favorite thing about this pizza is it is so simple to make. There are only 3 ingredients and it tastes great. I have my pizza ready to go. I just need to make sure that it's not stuck. Looks great. Well, this is hot out of the oven and it looks great. I'm going to hit it with a little bit of fresh basil, just right on top. Okay, it's time to give it a taste. That is so good. It is classic for a reason. Mozzarella, tomato, and basil is a perfect combination and so good in this pizza. Thank you for joining us for another Best of Food for Thought.